Good morning. Welcome to Fort Quincy. And I said good morning because it is morning. After a very late night at the city council meeting, I didn't stay up for it, but I'm sure others did. And here we are, with a bit of a hangover, some totally expected results as far as what actually went on as far as votes, as far as who voted what and where. We're going to explore that a little bit. I have Lea DeGloria here this morning, and I got her name right without stumbling. Not bad. And she's going to take the lead on some commentary on the council meeting last night, starting probably specifically with the ENC vote. So here we go, Lea. You ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, as ready as I'll ever be. I think the first thing to talk about is how just upset people were after that vote. There was a picture of that I had, somebody had shared with me, of Dr. Yakubian outside. I mean, I don't even think he got to do his public comment. He was so upset. He just left.
Yes.
A lot of people had signed up for public comment, and once the vote came through, they just left. And I have a feeling, or just how defeated people felt. You have this, which I talked about in my public comment, which is the social compact. So you elect these officials, and you have a covenant with your elected officials. You give them the power of legislation and vote, and you trust that they are going to represent you. And I think here we see that the majority is not being represented. And it's sad, because a lot of those people may not have gotten out to vote, or weren't engaged because everything was working fine in the city of Quincy. They were happy with what was going on, and I don't think anybody could have conceived the ramifications of this election and the long-term damage that it's done to Wollaston. You think, oh, well, what can happen if I don't participate in an election? What can happen if maybe a progressive Democrat decides, or a social justice warrior gets into office, or what could possibly happen? Well, you're seeing it. There's a clash of ideologies.
Yeah, I have one comment to make regarding that. John Paul Jones, very simply put, I have not yet begun to fight. That's going to be a byword, by phrase, and that's going to weigh heavily over the next 17 months. Because a lot of people have seen what the Lea Alliance is all about, and what their covert plan is as far as taking over city government is concerned. Didn't mean to jump on you.
Oh no, that's what we're doing here. It's your show. I think that, some, I believe, may just be along for the ride. Like I could be wrong. I don't think Virginia Ryan has any, long-term plans. I think she likely votes with maybe what Ann Mahoney wants. For me, I feel that it's Maggie McKee is the one who, she's Ward 5, and when she talked about, right up front, she said, I'm voting no on the ENC, which contrasts that with Noel DeBona, who says, I talked to previous Ward 5 councilors, what would they do? He not leaned heavily, but he had his own thoughts, but he reached out to other people because, Noel is a great representation of, what you are when you are managing relationships with people. He talks to people. So I think the reality is that, she didn't do that. She has her own mind as to what's happening, and she won't
relent. Okay, ENC and Ward 5 most definitely was and is and will continue to be ground zero. She made a comment a week ago at the city council meeting that she's, and she referenced one and done, and she said she's not running to get reelected. Well, and I mentioned it last night. She should be running to get reelected based upon the constituents that totally and completely agree with what she's doing, and she's finding out she doesn't have that support, and she's going to find out she's going to have a lot less support. Councillor Ewan, if I'm pronouncing that right, evidently she accused Noel DeBona of not having a backbone during the meeting. I didn't hear it because I have a tendency to ignore whatever she says because, first of all, I can't hear too well, and second of all, I can't understand her that well. And it was brought to my attention that that happened, and Ann Mahoney did not gavel her.
Wow.
And it's pretty interesting that obviously what's good for me is not good for thee.
Well, I think when it comes to Maggie McKee in Ward 5, she really showed her cards. She said, and she had made up her mind, I think before the ENC even came to vote. I don't think any of them ever planned to vote for the ENC. I mean, that was just the Titanic to begin with. But when she mentioned that she still believes that through zoning, they can still have control of the ENC, the city council can, and then she mentioned the PUD, and I looked that up later, and that's planned unit development. And that's something that we've seen, or if you look it up, and I'll do research later on this, is what had gone on in Cambridge. The city council rezoned certain areas, and the residents are really upset about it, and they feel like it looks like a mini Manhattan. So we have this, I hear all the time, residents in Quincy say, we don't want another Cambridge. We don't want to be like Cambridge. And I never knew what they were talking about, right? Because I started at the statues. That's my main mission. And then all this political stuff evolved, right? And so you have a genuine concern from residents that they don't want these planned unit developments. But that's Maggie McKee's vision. Maggie McKee thinks that, and she probably believes that she's going to make a difference. Maybe she thinks she's going to solve the housing crisis, and she's going to use the ENC as a case study for her own agenda. But that's not what the people want. The people have spoken, the majority, and they want it as a community asset. They want the Wollaston Library over there. David Murphy, when he got on to talk about the ENC proposal, which is another thing, they completely wouldn't even let him present his proposal.
And his discourse with the mayor was 20 minutes long, developing all the assets and what could be done with the entire 27 acres and how it would be achieved. Totally disregarded. And again, I understand there's a time constraint. But again, the way he was blown off was pretty disrespectful, which is consistent with their approach to conducting business. One quickie about PUD. From what I've seen, they look like Russian barracks. I'm sorry, and no knock against the Russians, but I've stayed in facilities that look like Russian barracks, and when you went into the rooms, they were like a Russian barracks. So that's what ENC's campus potentially is going to look like.
Well, and we also have evidence. Maggie McKee did share in her newsletter a few months ago that she had actually visited some of these PUDs in Cambridge. And I don't know who she was with, but that tells you that the agenda for ENC was already in place way before. So you have the mayor who's coming up in good faith, presenting a proposal. You have the board of ENC coming up in good faith. They're thinking that they're putting together this proposal that could potentially be approved. But we're not operating in good faith with these people. So that's the problem that I find, is that, you have all these residents, they're getting up, they're making all these great points, but when I say the Bully Alliance, they don't care. Maggie McKee has already had her agenda for ENC, and they all have their own different agendas. Maybe Suzanne Yuan she wants to be that say no and be like, nope, we're not doing it. Ann Mahoney, she's power hungry. She wants to do it. David Jacobs, he'll just go with whatever. And Virginia Ryan, she'll just go with whatever. I'm not saying they don't have their independent thoughts. Obviously, David Jacobs has his own thoughts when he speaks. I mean, he's always speaking, and then he's looking at Ann Mahoney for approval, like she's his. I mean, Ann Mahoney must be his work wife. You know what I'm saying? Because he's constantly looking to her for approval and following around like a puppy dog, right? So he basically worships the ground she walks on and will do whatever she says.
Well, his political future is tied to her, as his job and employment was tied to her in Holbrook. So consequently, he's probably owing or feels a debt, number one. And number two, he's not capable of standing on his own 2 feet. So he needs the support of someone like Ann Mahoney.
Yeah, she gives him his ideas. But he mentioned something that his father, who we always see in the city council meetings, always took him to city council meetings when he was a kid. So I don't know what the history is there or why maybe his father, I don't know if he was a political or ever a counselor at large. Do we know anything about?
No, he was a B cop over at UMass Boston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's good. It's good to have engagement of kids. I saw Kylie there last night with his daughter.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it was his wife, and that's great. Getting young kids involved and seeing what actually goes on in a city council meeting, and especially with the public forum, even though it's kind of in a vacuum with the Bully Alliance, the opportunity to see people get up and speak to the powers to be, which is awesome.
I know Kristen Campbell, who was heavily involved in the Save ENC movement. She was there with her kids yesterday and a few days. I think the council meeting was last week. She was there with her 2 children, so she's obviously getting them involved as well.
She told me, I was talking with her one day, and she said on occasion she goes over and visits Dr. Yakubian with her children.
Oh.
And they, he talks to them about Quincy, in the way Quincy was being brought up. And it's funny, born and raised in Quincy, which is something that there aren't many people around like that. As a sidelight.
I think there are a lot of people who were born and raised in Quincy, but now they're afraid to even say it because we're seeing that somehow if you say, hey, I'm born and raised here, that's a bad thing. Let's talk about just a business. If you own a business and you owned a business and you opened it up in 1998 and your customer walked through the door and they still were your customer to 2026, they'd say, I was one of the first customers, and they'd be proud. And the owner would say, yes, and this is special. This is a special thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't understand why saying, hey, I'm born and raised here is such a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's being twisted and manipulated to actually silence people.
Absolutely.
It silences, your pride in the city. It's a complete ignorance of history.
Well, it's an intimidation factor also, especially in the case of city employees.
Yeah.
A lot of city employees were born and raised here, and they make that they specifically to Bully Alliance, specifically Maggie McGee, makes it sound like it's sinful through the hiring process. 3 generations of firemen, 2 generations, 3 generations of cops, guys that work in the DPW. They were born and raised here. They have pride in the city. They love the city. They have a strong feeling, a positive feeling towards the administration because it's basically like a family and has been like a family. And
well, let's talk about that because that was a big bombshell that was dropped at one of the budget meetings where, we're at a budget meeting and we're talking about, the HR, just budget.
Yeah.
This is not a forum to talk about HR hiring practices. None of them are human resources professionals, and they have no business going over, decisions like that. But then Maggie McKee clearly states, well, if you take away the school department and you just look at this slim corner, it's, I think she said 94% white and 74% male or vice versa.
Well, that's where figures don't lie, but liars can figure.
That's right. And the reality is Susan Yuen's a scientist, so she knows about, study bias. I don't know if that's the proper name for it, but oftentimes when people are doing experiments, they get biased into what the result will be.
Sure.
It happens in science with hard numbers, right? So you have Maggie McKee, who's clearly showing her bias. She believes, and she believes that there are some discriminatory hiring practices going on in the city, and she has no evidence to it. She pulled all these reports, which if anybody's watching this, I would strongly encourage people to do a records request to find out what actually Maggie McKee asked for. Ask for the emails because by right, you're entitled to have those emails. Do your own research. Do your own studies because this is where civic engagement comes in. We have information, we have access, and you have to be watching and putting the real story out there because she just peppered into a city council meeting that there was some discriminatory hiring practices.
Totally unrelated to the budget.
Totally unrelated to the budget, and the HR professional pushed back on that.
Yeah.
She said, That's absolutely really not what's happening. And she talked about what their hiring practices were.
Yeah.
And, Maggie McKee didn't ask, well, how many minorities have actually even applied for these jobs? Do they even want these jobs? I mean, not to assign anything to Asian people, but I find Asian people to be of high intellect, and they're
Yes.
raised where and honestly, this may be racist, I think some of the reason why the school systems are so great is because of the Asian community, because they value education so much.
And they raise all the numbers.
And they are, this is part of their culture. I'm more speaking towards like the Chinese community. I don't know about the Vietnamese or the Japanese or what are those, but when I say Asian, my experience mostly with Chinese culture.
I think in that case,
not that I know, and I don't want anybody to say, oh, she's making generalizations, but I think it's known that the Asian culture prioritizes education, and you see that with the students.
And they prioritize hard work.
Hard work, right.
I don't have a lot of experience with the Asian community. I have a limited experience with the Vietnamese community, but the Vietnamese community are traditionally hardworking, especially if they're immigrants that came in when they were younger.
Right.
And they're geared towards working hard, becoming successful, buying into the American dream. Work hard, earn money, buy your own home, be a good citizen.
Yeah, I mean, these are business owners. So you also
Yes.
the reason why you see a majority of, Asian business owners and not that many maybe white business owners is because, again, it's part of who you are. You're raised where that's part of your dream to own a business or a restaurant or, whatever that may be. And that maybe you see more, plumbers that are white because maybe that's the lane they come through. So this idea that there's this, racism, you have to look at the full picture of the socioeconomics, the demographics.
You don't take a capsule view of it.
Right.
Again, you do have to look at it, not only from a general standpoint, but specifics for each individual group. My grandparents came over from Italy. My parents, neither one of them graduated from high school. I went to trade school originally. I'm going to spout off a little bit about where I came from. As an example, I went to Quincy Trade School, graduated in '63, radio, TV, and electronics. I didn't go to college. I went into service, came out, worked in industry for a short period of time, specifically the shipyard, my first job.
Oh, wow.
And I finally decided I got to go to college. I'm not going to be a grunt for the rest of my life. But again, I worked hard. I put myself through college. My parents couldn't afford it. I was married with 2 children when I finally graduated. I lived in G-Town, Germantown, for 4 years because I was a sub-low income individual, and my family, wife and child and children, we were sub-income. So I worked my butt off to get out of there and to succeed. And I've been successful, very successful in business outside of Quincy, totally outside of Quincy. None of my bones were made in Quincy, and for a very specific reason. I didn't want to have to owe anyone politically or socially in the city. And now I'm back, and I'm not going to deal with this crap that's going on. And I see that's why I referenced John Paul Jones. People have got to get upset. They can't continue to look at this and say, it's business as usual. No, it's not. The reason why business as usual in the past was so successful because it was a joint effort between the city council and the mayor and all the department heads. Everyone worked together, and the tax rate is going up. Property values are sky high. It's unrealized income unless you sell it. It hurts to pay that tax bill every quarter. But by the same token, you look at the benefits derived from it in the city. And a lot of the department heads have talked about it. And I have not been a part of the school system budget process. But again, you look at what we have in the city of Quincy. That doesn't come free. There is no free lunch. If you want something free, the only place you're going to get it all is in prison. You get a bed, you get a meal, and you get security. Otherwise, don't be afraid to stand out there and take your shots and be taken. That's the way of life.
Some people try to get back into the prison system.
Well, yeah, maybe.
I hate to say it, but I do know people, which I shouldn't brag to know these kind of people, who you wanted to get back in prison and thought prison was easier, which was
it's safe.
actually really sad.
Yeah. Well, not safe, but it's a secure
3 hots
environment.
in a cot. That's what they say. 3
Yeah.
hots in a cot.
Yeah.
But I wanted to backpedal just before. I'm not saying that non-Asian parents don't prioritize education. I just want to be clear on that. I know a lot of parents prioritize education. I'm just saying, from what I've seen, going through the Quincy public school system, when I lived in Quincy, that generally Asian parents really, and actually more South Asian, even like Indian, is that the right, not Native American, but Indian parents,
Yeah.
those South Asian people, they do really prioritize education. To talk about growing up Italian, as I'm Italian, I think this might be a little bit of a thing, but old school Italians didn't really prioritize education as much, I don't think. I think they were more about the trades.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you had, and this is something that I took, that the Jewish people and the Italians immigrated at around the same time, and where they diverged was the Jewish, and anybody can look this up, it's true, because immigration has their own, there's waves of immigration that come in, and at the time, Italians and Jewish immigrated around the same time, and where the Jewish people were more geared towards higher education, college, doctors, lawyers, those things. The Italians were more geared towards the trades, and they wanted to get out and work. So I think that when we're talking about immigration, race, we have to talk about the culture and how people view, what they're going to do and how they're going to make themselves in the world.
It's not only the culture, but it's the heritage of the city.
That's true.
The city has been built on immigrants.
That's right.
Swedes, Italians.
Yeah, Germantown was all Germans. That's why it's called Germantown, and it was farmers in Germantown.
The quarry workers, Italians and Swedes, and
Yeah.
Finnish. You look at various areas in the city. I mentioned the Quincy shipyard. I worked there for a year. It was almost a rite of passage for anyone that didn't go to college. The first place they went to was Quincy shipyard. Bethlehem Steel and General Dynamics. Why? Because the school system in the trade school had trades that were geared towards apprenticeship programs at the shipyard. So it was a process where it was a cooperative process within the city with one of the organizations, very large employers. A lot of people don't know the number of businesses, dramatic scale, from in North Quincy. I'm going to get into that with Dr. Yakubi in September when I have him back on again, because he lived in that area and he serviced that area. And it's amazing what's the transition the city's gone through in the last 50 years. Positive transitions.
And I wonder why people don't want to look at history. Just, you know what I mean? Like, history gives you the full picture of things.
Yeah.
It's almost like we want to just wipe it out and have everything new. And, if you don't look to the past, you're going to repeat the mistakes in the future, right?
And that's the reason why. You
They
wipe
wanna
out
make-
history
yeah.
so they can have their own agenda, which is based upon things in the past that didn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly. So I see no problem with kind of looking at, things from history, taking the full context of things. And it's interesting because some of these counselors, they do so much research, but it never expands to socioeconomics. We look at, some of them want to just look at black and white. They don't want to look at green, which green is the money, right?
Yeah.
So money is the color that makes the world go round, right? So, socioeconomics should come into play when we're talking about anything at all. History should come into play. Immigration, the immigration problems of today are pretty much the same immigration problems 100 years ago. Look into what solutions did they come up with? What's working? What was something intended for? And is it meeting that intention now? There's so many things that, were put into governance that had an intention, and the intention is completely morphed into something else.
Yeah.
And that's a conversation for another time.
One of the things that we keep talking about what's going on in the city, and different backgrounds and history of people. I had an uncle who was my mentor. He passed away when he was 95. He was international production manager for a company called American Cyanamide, which is Merck now. So everybody knows Merck.
Yeah.
He was an awesome guy. His whole philosophy, and he was a MIT graduate, chemical engineering, 1939, Italian heritage. His parents were immigrants. They weren't happy with him going to college because they wanted him to work.
Right.
And he fought it all the way, and he worked in school. Plus, he had a professor that wanted to bounce him out because he was Italian. So he fought that too. So he was a hardworking guy, but his whole history and his whole success is based upon the idea that it doesn't matter whether you get the floor sweeper or the general manager or the CEO, this guy down there sweeping the floor and running the machine, their whole philosophy and interest is working, generating income, taking care of their family, and being successful, maybe having a couple of beers at night, who knows, you know? But
Right.
they don't want to deal with all the periphery crap that we see going on in the city right now. And well, that's my tale, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is there's dignity in work, whatever
Yeah.
that work is.
Yeah.
And so, you know, people just get out in life, get out and work,
Hmm.
whatever it may be. There really isn't, you know, much to say about. You know, some people want to judge what type of job you have or whatever, but
Yeah.
I think he's spot on, and there's dignity in work, and that is, you just talked about the Italian culture. It was not to get higher education, it was to get out and work.
Yeah.
Those were the type of people that they were, and that just illustrates the culture. Is that when Maggie McKee is looking at this study, she's completely taking out the culture of the people that are working. She's suggesting let's black out people's names. She's suggesting there's something going on that may not be there. And if there is, the evidence that she provided in 5 minutes or less of a HR budget meeting did not give that to me at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why I would encourage people to kind of
Do their own research.
do your own research.
Well-
But what do you think's next for ENC? I mean, what are your thoughts on? I mean, I think, how far are people willing to go to fight for something?
I don't know. I have my ideas. I don't want to talk about them, but it's going to be interesting what the immediate neighbors and people in the surrounding, not only immediate but also the surrounding area, because in the entire city, it's going to impact the entire city depending upon what's developed in there. As was stated, if they develop it full up and they put 400 or 500 units in, those are going to be potentially 250 to 500 kids. They're going to have to educate. More fire, more police, more services. It's all based on numbers. And
Well, if they were going to do that, maybe they wouldn't be geared towards families. We don't know. They could be geared towards just single occupancy.
that could be single bedroom.
We don't know.
units.
We don't know what type of plan is in there. But I will say, I mean,
It all the Russian barracks. It boils down to the same thing again.
I think it's sad that you have a clash of ideologies where you have one side of the community that wants to preserve this as an asset for generations to come. They want maybe the Wollaston Library in there, which would have been beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
They want to, maybe sell off some of the other houses. They could have been sold. The houses on Sachem Street could have been sold off as affordable housing.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Habitat for Humanity could have came in there and rehabbed them a little bit. There could have been a lottery for affordable housing for people. There was still room for some affordable housing plans in
Yeah.
the way that they were sold off. But now it's just, I don't like when McKee says the word scary. I know it's scary. I know people are scared. Nobody's scared. I'm not scared. Are you scared?
No.
No.
I'm
Hell no.
motivated.
I'm not scared. Nobody's scared. And I'm thinking, why does she keep using that word like talking to the public like they're children? You know what I mean?
Sure.
That pisses me off. Don't tell me that I'm afraid. If I'm afraid, I'll tell you, hey, I'm scared. No, I'm not. I think the people are angry. And if anything, they feel frustrated
Yeah.
and
definitely.
defeated. And no, where people are defeated.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, we're going to kind of finish here. I want to show one thing, get it up on screen. Can everyone read that? Oop. Everyone, yeah, let's see, 11/2/27, one and done for Quincy. Let's keep that in mind, and as time goes on, and we start getting closer to it, a lot of what's gone on in the past 6 months is not going to be forgotten. A lot of what goes on in the future is not going to be forgotten. And there was a time, having grown up in the 60s, where the voting public was, their memory was 3 to 6 months. And that's it. So politicians could say and do whatever they wanted. Can they do that now? No, because it's all on the internet. It lives forever. And believe me, a lot of what's gone on the past 6 months, and I'm sure it's going to continue to go on, is going to be remembered, produced, and put out there for everyone to absorb. So with that, we're gonna wrap up. I want to thank Gloria for her time.
Gloria.
Gloria.
People call me Gloria
Lea.
too. It's maybe that should be one of my fake names. I have Lea DeGloria, Gloria.
We're not going to cut that either, because this is a one and done.
Yeah, I don't
Right?
care.
Just like this, one and done. So
Somebody call, they do.
Lea,
People
I'm sorry,
call
I
me
apologize.
DeGloria, yes. Call me DeGloria.
No.
DeGloria. That should be my new Facebook
Oh
name.
God, I apologize. How many times? That's probably the third time I've screwed your
I
name
don't
up.
care.
People call me Frank all the time, which
Call
doesn't
me
bother
anything,
me.
just don't call me late for dinner.
There you go. But we're gonna wrap up now, and again, I want to thank Lea for her presence here, certainly her insight into everything, and being the motivating factor behind everything that's being brought out in the city, starting with the statues. Fantastic, man.
Main
keep it up.
mission.
Yeah. Stay focused. All right. Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye.